The story of the final Super Sentai began much earlier than its predecessors, as rumors of the 2025 season began circulating as early as August of 2024, before a trademark even dropped. This show was said to be animal-themed, with a red wolf ranger leading a hawk, unicorn, lion, and dinosaur ranger into battle using the power of rings, celebrating the 50th anniversary of the franchise. Come September, a rumored title dropped, One Sentai Gozyuger. This leak said the power of the rings would be used in a gold fist sword with an appearance similar to Ultraman Trigger Eternity's sword, and it would trigger upgrades similar to Kishiryu Sentai Ryu's soldier, featuring the first Green Ranger in 5 years, the first woman to be a Black Ranger ever, and the return of a female Blue Ranger. Rumors throughout October said that this team would be a family of some kind, and their suits featured a design similar to the Plosion Rage Buckle from Kamen Rider Geats. At the end of the month, the title number 1 Sentai Gozyuger was trademarked, at least confirming the name of the season, but not confirming suit designs, as the rise of artificially generated images created many fake leaks. In November, a title of the season in black and white was trademarked, alongside rumors of the 6th Ranger, said to be a silver and gold suit based on a bear that transformed using a knuckle changer. At the end of this month, the suits were leaked for the first time, confirming many previous rumors but also deconfirming a couple others. Throughout December, Toei began officially releasing information on the show, such as a 50th anniversary teaser video officially showing off the suits for the first time, magazine scans showing the first looks at the Rangers' individual mecha rings and their combinations, and Sentai rings, culminating in the show's official announcement on Christmas Day. This not only confirmed the February air date and some of the staff working on the show, but also teased the number 1 showdowns against number 1 monsters and the introduction of previous Sentai Reds that would appearing, resulting in Sentai versus Sentai battles. It wouldn't be until a month later, after teasing the main cast in a picture many thought was made up of previous Red Rangers, that the end of January brought the usual press conference and trailer showcasing the main Rangers and their bride-on foes, but also the Universe Warriors that encompassed that previous Red Ranger tease and that would be appearing in the first couple episodes and throughout the entire show. Rumors arrived for the Red's individual weapon called the Wolf de Caliber, appearing in similar appearance to Saba, a Ring Hunter Garyudo that transformed with a black Tega sword called the Tega Jun, and Goju Polar, the white 6th Ranger that transformed with Gouda Burn and fought with the Bear Kuma. Early side content also started dropping, like the TTFC anniversary discussion feature with Kamen Rider appearances and Gozyuger Episode 0, which gave a first taste of the story for the final Super Sentai, which began airing on February 16th, 2025. So number 1 Sentai Gozyuger has concluded, and there is a lot to talk about with my thoughts on the show, stuff outside the show. Make sure you let me know what you think down in the comment section, but let's get right into it. Personally, I love Gozyuger. Right from the beginning, the ring battle is such an awesome premise to me. The idea of a Super Sentai Battle Royale is something I thought about while I was watching Kyoryuger just a couple of years ago. I can't believe that was a couple of years ago. In that show, they would have Rangers show up for a little mini arc, then they'd give the team a mecha / power up, and then they would disappear but return over time throughout the show. They wouldn't be recurring characters, but like somewhat recurring characters. I bring this up because I thought it would be cool to have a whole season like that where we have new Rangers appear again and again and again and again, giving new power-ups, but I thought, that wouldn't be feasible for an actual season, but it's what this show, is, straight up. We get the Sentai formula of Civilians of the Week, Characters of the Week, and flip it on its head by making them their own Super Sentai Rangers. So these individual arcs have these fun little quirks that aren't just the civilian or monster of the week doing something different, but this different ranger of the week doing something different, their little powers, their different personalities. Some of them are anti-heroes, some are just full-on allies, some are partnered up, some are able to use mechas, some are just thrown into an episode as a one-off for the heroes to defeat, and all of it fleshes out the world in this really cool way to me. Like, it's such a cool way to portray this super big battle royale ring battle, rather than just having the Gozyugers collect and or fight for the rings, or just having monsters using the rings. Having actual rangers using these ranger powers is so cool. Then the fact that the rings earned from the Universe Warriors get turned into power-ups for the Gozyugers. So it's not just that they're fighting these people and defeating them. When Goju Tsurano uses the Car Ranger ring in an episode just in the middle of a fight, we're reminded of a whole previous episode where he met the previous Universe Red Racer, rectified his relationship with her and some stuff from his past, and then earned this new power and placement in the Ring War. When Goju Leon uses the Magi Ranger ring in a fight, or Goju Unicorn uses the Zenkaiser ring in a fight, it calls back to this big emotional arc the two of them had fighting against this super big villain, and all of those plotlines coalescing, which also individually have a couple other rings reappearing, reminding us of previous arcs. It's so cool. Like, it's such a cool way to build on top of everything. But I cannot talk about how much I love the Universe Warriors in this concept without talking about the show's aesthetics. I do love the look of this show. All the aesthetics are very cool looking. Before we get to that though, I'm talking about how the previous Sentai Reds are used for the Universe Warriors. The only reason we're able to get all of these one-off Sentai Rangers really is because they don't have to make a ton of new suits for them. They're suits from the last 50 years of the franchise. It adds this entire other level to the stuff I just mentioned about why I like them so much, because the unique stuff with individual Universe Warriors now turns into this remix of our heroes that have appeared in the past. Like, the villain of this random arc is now Battle Japan, but Battle Japan with a whole power-up. Or Don Momotaro reappears with the power of his comrades using the power of his villain in that show, which is very fun but weird. And at the same time later, True Hero from that show is used as a full-on villain. And I really do not care that most / all of them aren't past characters reprising their roles, because that's the point, that it is seeing these old powers used in new ways. And I think that's a fun celebration of 50 years of Sentai, since that's what the show is made for, to reminisce on those powers but see them used in new ways, so that our culmination of all of this is one of our previous Red Rangers actually returning with his own powers alongside a brand new Red Ranger who's wielding the power of the first Universe Warrior we ever met on screen. It's like after we've reminisced on the past, journeyed through the decades of Super Sentai history, the endpoint is this new thing wielding the powers of the past in more than one way, so that he still remains original. I can agree it's not perfect in this show. Like, I know a lot of people are upset that lots of Universe Warriors are defeated off screen, or they never had a user to begin with. The rings just appear. And look, if you're upset that your favorite Sentai season didn't get a dedicated arc, or a dedicated character, or character using the ring, I think that's fair. Like, I'm not gonna deny that. I got lucky that two of my favorites ended up being the same character that was a recurring boss. So, like, you know, Zenkaiser was really important in the show, so I'm happy. But if your character or favorite Sentai suit, like, barely appears, hey, you know, I'm not gonna clown on you for that. However, I do feel like a lot of us in the fandom do need to separate stuff we wish happened from stuff that's, like, actual problems or criticism with the show. Like, would it have been cool if more Universe Warriors were, like, recurring side characters as Universe Warriors? Yes. Should we have gotten more randoms defeated on screen? Sure. But, like, does that mean the show did a bad job with the premise of a Sentai Battle Royale? Like, we were never going to get 50 side characters, 50 plot lines, and we get a ton of, like, characters and plot lines anyways, so it's not like they didn't do this formula to a good extent. Since all of these Universe Warriors are so unique and diverse, please let me know who your favorite was down in the comment section, or who you wish appeared the most in Universe Warrior format. I do want to admit, though, that the other side of maybe why it feels like the Universe Warriors aren't a huge element of the show is that we also have the Brydon and No One monsters participating in the ring battle. It's not just our Rangers. So it does feel a bit cluttered maybe sometimes. But the Brydon themselves as characters, like our actual villain faction, are awesome. First of all, just the aesthetic of them being wedding themed through the little monsters to the generals to the mechas, because the Rangers use rings and say engage, is incredible stuff. Actually, we're going to cut right here. Before we move on to the Brydon, let's talk the aesthetics of everything just really quickly. I don't need to do a deep dive because you all have seen this stuff, but I love these Gozyuger aesthetics. I already talked about the stuff with the rings and Universe Warriors, but the main suits look so incredible. I love that the changer is used to become the mecha and their individual weapons are used to become parts of the mecha. I love that the mecha and ranger fights are so separate this season. I feel like every single episode that has a mecha fight has an on-the-ground fight happening at the same time. That is very unique and fun, and maybe adds to the chaos of everything, but it's, I like it. I like it. Absolute contenders for this season in terms of aesthetic are normal Goju Wolf is an incredible suit. Wild Goju Wolf, probably one of, if not my favorite suits in Sentai, and Garyudo. But everything else looks really cool. Anyways, let's bring it back to the Brydon. I think the characters of the Brydon, of course, are great as well. The premise of Tegajun being this false Tegasaur that wishes to prove herself as a real god by using the rings to create a better world is so unique for a villain. So it puts the Brydon in this interesting position as antagonists of the show, but they aren't always or necessarily full-on villains. They're just following this wish to fix the world through certain means, and of course their fun little quirks add to that as well, like Fire Candle's rivalry, Bouquet's love for Rikuo, Shining Knife and Sweet Cake being whatever they are. It makes them feel not just fleshed out characters, but they're not fully evil. They're just unique people, I guess is one way to put it. However, Garyudo is one of my favorite Sentai rivals ever, if not my favorite. And yes, it is partly because that suit is hot as fuck, but also I think he's a good addition to this villain cast because he's just a straight up evil dude that gives them this edge in some fights. If he's around, we're not messing around. It's not, the other guys can mess around a bit. He's not. And it's just nice to have a classic Sentai rival that when he appears in an episode, because he doesn't always appear, it's important, or a fight scene is gonna be something to focus on. The stakes are raised. Instead of making their relationship change, we kind of learn why their relationship is the way it is, and eventually let them flip over to the side of good. Something I actually wasn't 100% expecting. I kind of expected them to go to the Calamity side and end up being a bigger threat to everything, but I'm perfectly fine with him ending up as a sword that gets to transform into Final Fight. I'm very happy with that, actually. So he's one of my favorite characters, both on the Brydon and overall. And because of how evil he is, when he does switch to the good guy side, the rest of the Brydon follows, for the most part. And it makes, this really interesting dynamic in the show. And it's not because they're following him, it's just because all of their other individual arcs led to flipping sides, and it's just so natural in terms of development. Of course, the other aspect of that is the Calamity, our other big bads of the season. So, from the get-go, for me, it did feel like the Brydon would end up at least working with the Gozyuger, maybe not full-on redemption, but it's because we got the big evil Calamity introduced in the very first scene of the show, and even before the show, if you're one of the few or many that watched episode 0. I actually don't know how many people are aware of episode 0, let alone watched it, but there was literally a big cloud over the show for me, waiting for when the Calamity would actually appear. So much like how an episode with Garyudo is when something's going to be a little bit serious, an episode with the Calamity, or let alone when they arrived in the story and started growing in importance, is when stuff felt like stakes were rising. I feel like Rei feels like this big important threat, not just because of his character, but because he's aligned with the previous rulers of, not the previous rulers of this world, but the previous threat that could only be struck down by the god of destruction, Tegasword. So the Brydon and No Ones aren't as threatening when this ethereal darkness starts creeping into our silly little ring fights. Of course, the Brydon end up switching sides when their goal is to help save the world. I will admit it does feel kind of weird they exist only in singular episodes, except for Rei. It does work for me sometimes because they are this force of nature. Ultimately, for me, the Brydon are the true bad guy focus, and the Calamity is just a mechanism to let the Brydon reach their full potential as characters. The final boss of the show is the general of the Brydon, who was the first fight of the show, the first roll call of the season, but he's powered by the Calamity. Like, it's perfect for his character and perfect use of the Calamity since they are that force of nature. It's used to empower the character we actually care about, that we want to see. And the fact at least I care about Fire Candle. I am invested in his plot to save his people now that we've kind of grown attached to them. I do really like the way they made that final battle work. But of course, the only reason that finale works, these villains work, is our final Super Sentai. I like the Gozyugers. I like that the show committed to them being rivals in the ring war for the most part. They're allied for most of the show, but it works. Again, that's why the Calamity works, why the Brydon work, to unite these characters until we make the final arc a challenge between each member. I think that's really cool. They actually committed to that. I know that Kinji and Ryugi as characters are kind of the same joke over and over, but I like them. They're funny, they're silly, and they do have their moments. Ryugi, like, leaving and coming back is so cool, like, not only because it's kind of a reference to Key Ranger getting replaced in the original Go Ranger season, but because it's just really cool to have an episode where our Yellow Ranger is a different guy. In Kinji, I think his old man storyline really took us by surprise, and it ended up being surprisingly heartwarming, seeing not only him acting as this grandfather to the Gozyugers, but eventually forfeiting his place in the ring battle because he realized he already got his wish many years ago with his old wife. Maybe he could have wished for her to come back, but I'm not going to tell him how to live his life. Sumino probably had the most interesting plotline with her sister being missing, and eventually it ties up into all the lore and, like, the Calamity, which is pretty cool, actually. I think she should have had more focus after her sister was saved. I feel like there's nothing to her besides still trying to save her sister, but, like, in a different way. But I'll touch on that later. I can't deny Hueru got the lion's share of focus. But it's to the benefit of the show, in my opinion. I do think that focusing on this lone wolf character that ends up building all these relationships with all these crazy people, and then focusing on his absence of a wish to the point where he has no choice but to wish for everything all over again, because that ended up being just the thing that his life was about, is really cool. I think that was a really nice way to end both his character and the entire season. That's why I don't mind it focused on him, because that is just what the season's about. Like, that these people united together through this ring war, and Hueru's the center point of it. Of course, the actual line in the show is Rikuo, and I feel like he definitely got the most fleshed out storyline because of Bouquet being such an integral part of it. And I think they ended up being my favorite duo of the show, at least in the core 5. I did like Rikuo from the start for the novelty of being a blue male ranger idol character. The blue part doesn't really matter for that, but I ended up saying it. And then they ended up introducing Bouquet, liking him as a fan, and it was kind of like both a will they won't they plotline, but also like, oh no, they're rivals, and eventually they have to find out and something's gonna happen because they established Bouquet hates Goju Leon. Bouquet herself fangirling is also adorable, and it's because I can relate. Here's my Majin Shrine. And I do think they really did a good job showing the fallout of what happens when she finds out, and having her go so far deep into the darkness and eventually being pulled back, not just because like of her love for Rikuo, but just like, establishing that she doesn't have to be what she was made to be or what the Bride-On organization needs her to be. She can be a fan of this singer from another world if she so desires. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with it, I think. So that was great for Bouquet's character. The part that made Rikuo end up standing out to me is him dropping out of the ring war, not because his wish was already granted, like Kinji, but because he realized that his wish was just running away from what his real dream was for, and that he already had the power to achieve it, and he just had to remove the mental blocks, I guess, the fear that having the wish to fall back on created. Like, that was a really interesting dynamic to create. From the get-go, you kind of figure most of the Rangers are gonna get their wish without winning the ring war, and I think for Rikuo, that was a really unique way to achieve it. And then we have the greatest Sixth Ranger of all time, Godness Kumade. This motherfucker joins the show and uses his own insert song as a brand new intro sequence, and also just happens to be the greatest song ever. Just take a listen. He totally flips the lore of the show on its head, establishing this previous Gozyuger team, that he was the pilot in Tegasword. He's the one in episode 0 of the show, technically. He's used to build the fear of the Calamity. Like, if this guy knows what this is and he's scared of it, what are we supposed to do? He advertises the X-Robo Universe toys. He has to take off his coat after he transforms. He's got a Bear Kuma, who's very funny. I do like the two of them together. I do think Gudaburn is underutilized, both as a character and with him. But I also like how he's kind of fits into the story as this sort of rival to the main Rangers, since his wish is to become his own god. He does not follow Tegasword anymore. And the culmination of his arc being him accomplishing his power to become a god and rewriting the world, but using his own powers and then using those powers to rewrite the world to actually just save the world, and not just save the world, but defeat the manifestation of evil that destroyed his old world by punching it into the core of the earth as his insert song is blasting. Just take a listen. I am banning anyone and everyone who calls him a fraud in the comment section. This is my GOAT. I mean Bear. Some of that is the song playing right now, but I think he's so awesome overall. I think he's fun. He's everything I want out of a Sixth Ranger. I really had fun with him. And let's bring it down. Okay, so usually I review everything without trying to include fandom opinions or outside events, because this is about my opinion on the show. But I do think it's impossible to do that with Gozyuger, at least as someone watching it as it aired. First of all, Goju Unicorn got recast. She is straight up missing in multiple episodes outside of the suit. She's entirely green screened into basically all the other ones. If you weren't aware, because you're watching this in the future, you just didn't know, the original Goju Unicorn actress, Maya Imamori, was fired after episode 36 of Gozyuger, fired from her agency Seiju for underage drinking. So, for episode 37 and a couple other episodes, Toei had to scramble and just remove the character Sumino from episodes of Gozyuger. Eventually, they did recast, and they picked Kohaku Shida, and she was inserted into subsequent episodes to varying degrees of success, basically so that the show could continue on with the Sumino character. It does seem like the finale was filmed right around the original actress being fired, which is why it's the way it is. They seem to have planned for the worst, not even knowing if they get a Goju Unicorn back. And it does suck, right? Both because, like, for months before she was fired, there were these tabloids talking about Imamori in, like, a really bad light, possibly a ton of rumors being spread. I'm not on the set, pretty sure none of us were. So, you know, I don't want to contribute to spreading more rumors, but at the end of the day, like, it does seem very weird because, like, she was only a few months away from being the drinking age, and with all the tabloids and stuff, it doesn't feel like they just fired her for the drinking stuff, and it just sucks for her. I will say, I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it, I think Maya Miyamori was wronged by Seiju, possibly a bit of Toei in there as well, because Toei's a big company, but also maybe Toei couldn't do anything because the whole Japanese entertainment industry is like that. I'm just an American, so I can't say I know the ins and outs of the industry, but I think it sucks for her that all this had to happen to her, and I hope she's doing okay. She's not going to watch this, but, you know, I hope if you are, hey, I hope you're doing better. I don't want to come across insensitive or apathetic of her situation because I'm bringing it up in the context of my opinion on a children's TV show, but it does affect the show. If I'm going to review the show, this is a thing that has happened to the show, right? There's a distinct lack of Sumino in the last arcs. We know one entire episode got splintered into pieces. Who knows how many other scenes or episodes got splintered into pieces. The stuff that I enjoy about the season were still mostly present, so it does not completely drag down the quality of everything for me, but it does feel very weird, and it also sucks because she was the only girl on the team, so, like, there are episodes without a real Sentai heroine, which is just bad. So, I know a lot of people are like, oh, thomasjujube, why aren't you watching the last few arcs? That's why. I also know that plenty of people don't plan to catch up on Gozyuger or do not like Gozyuger straight up for this. And you know what? That's your opinion, and I think that's valid. Again, that is something that happened with this show. So you're free to not watch a show or not like a show for whatever reason you want. I think that's a valid one. The other thing with Gozyuger outside of the show is that it's the final Super Sentai season. I still don't believe it, even as I'm sitting here recording this. We've known for months, we've seen Gavan Infinity for months, but seeing him stride into that prism of light made by the heroes, villains, and everyone in between still doesn't feel like the end to me, because in some ways it isn't the end. We do still have plenty of toys coming out and probably to be announced. The Versus movie is still happening. The greatest Super Sentai prequel series ever is happening. I still have plenty of old seasons to go back and watch. You know, Sentai's not gone from this channel. I've got no excuse now. If I want Sentai, time to kick it all the way back, and it's time to get through some things. But it's not the same as watching it weekly, right? I can watch it with friends still. I can do this and that, but nothing's, I've seen those old suits. Some of their morphs, plenty of their villains in Gozyuger. We're never going to be surprised by a rival's debut out of nowhere again, or elated by the first team roll call airing on our computer screens, or overjoyed at a helmetless final battle. Yes, we can re-achieve this through rewatches or going back to these old seasons, but not new stuff. It's done. I know they've said that Sentai could come back decades from now, but it's an if for them. It is officially on hiatus from TV screens, at least. As a series, or a show airing on TV for Super Sentai, number one Sentai Gozyuger is the final season in that respect. So with the show we got, it does kind of suck. Because for me, because of how mistreated the final Super Sentai heroine was, right? Like, we don't have the last girl that transforms into a Sentai Ranger does not get her helmetless scene with the other boys. It sucks. I'm not going to deny that. Someone somewhere higher up over there should have done better. But what are we going to do? So with the show we do have, Gozyuger is the story of a world without Super Sentai. It's after Super Sentai. They only exist as legends. Some people are using these legends to help others. Others are a little more selfish with them, and some are just evil. But the one who ultimately wins the powers of all these legends is not someone evil, not selfish, and maybe not even a hero. He's just a lonely guy that wanted his friends back. And isn't that what Sentai is about, you know? That's why we roll call, we team pose, we pilot mechas together, unless you're a unique season. Because Sentai is more about being just an individual. It's about being part of a team. And that a team can do anything together, especially if they've got Bandai toys strapped to their arms. A year ago, I didn't know I was going to be watching the final season of Super Sentai. And neither did the writers, apparently. The show was not written with the intent of being the final season. And for me, the writing of the show did end up working as a final season of Sentai. Because Gozyuger, the story, somehow ended up being about us. A world without Super Sentai, where only the legends are left behind for everyone to take into their own hands and clap them. When Gozyuger started a year ago, I was in a weird place mentally. Just let's make this about me. I didn't know how much my life would end up changing in the years since then, as Gozyuger went through its highs and its very low lows. And despite all that, it was there. Gozyuger was there. I could watch Gozyuger weekly. Got the cool suits, got the cool power-ups, cool toys. And it's not like I fixed everything or even anything, but it was nice to watch Super Sentai weekly. Not just this year, but the year before that and the year before that. Ironically, despite everything that's changed, the only thing I did know for sure last year is that I would be talking about Gozyuger again like this. But I didn't know it would be like this. This is the final Sentai. Because now, for the first time, there's no Sentai to depend on, you know? Throughout this next year, who knows what's going to happen to me again? What's going to happen to you? Or to any of us? But there's no Sentai to fall back on. Of course, I can go and rewatch Gozyuger, so I can buy the toys. I can go check out Gokaiger for the first time. I can go do all that, right? Sentai is still here with us, but again, not the same as in the new experience of a new Sentai airing. Want to see the positive in this, and of course, it's not the worst thing ever. It's just a children's TV show's not going to be airing, but it's sad because Sentai is a big part of my life, obviously, maybe most of your lives. We're always going to carry the Super Sentai spirit with us, right? Because that's what the show really teaches. Even after the big gold god of destruction strikes down the cloud and spreads his powers across the world, Sentai still persisted, persevered, and it always will. But despite that, I am going to miss it.